I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, yeah, we have sorely changed. Whoa. Hey, hey. Whoa, oh, 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 whoa, oh, 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 oh.
And now, live from beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're watching My Fellow Americans with your host, Spike.
Yes! Yes, it's me! We're here! We made it another week! We survived one more week! Keep clapping! Clap for the continued survival and the healing. How would we know that you wanted to continue to survive if you didn't keep clapping? Welcome to My Fellow Americans. I am literally Spike Cohen. Thank you for taking a break from your long period of social distancing and self-quarantining to join me here, far away from you, where neither of us will touch each other. This is a Muddied Waters media production. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Anchor, Twitter, Periscope, iTunes, Google Play, float.app/muddiedwatersmedia/live. Check us out everywhere. Be sure to like us, follow us, 5-star us, hit that bell. If there's a bell on the thing that you're looking at us at right now, hit the bell. If there's a heart, hit that. Hit any of the things that demonstrate some kind of level of approval and desire to hear more of us. Hit all of the things if applicable, and be sure to share this video right now. The last thing that I want is for you and your closest loved ones who are, quarantined away from the rest of the world to miss out on a roughly hour-long Libertarian podcast on a Wednesday night. Share the gift of Spike Cohen today. Kids love it. This episode, of course, is brought to you by the Libertarian Party Dad Bod Calendar, featuring some of the sexiest Libertarian men that you will ever see, including this one right here, this sexy beast right here, Spike Cohen. Also featuring many other sexy Libertarian men. What better way to keep people from staying at least 6 feet away from you than to have pictures like this near you? What better way? This episode is also brought to you by the Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus, the fastest growing caucus in the Libertarian Party right now, I guess. It's one of the fastest growing. It's fastest growing waffle related caucus. We have buttons too. Be sure to hit me up if you want buttons. We've got tons of buttons. This episode is also brought to you by the Vermin Spike 2020 campaign. Vermin Supreme, Spike Cohen, President, Vice President, Badger, Vermin Supreme 2020, taking over. This episode is also brought to you, of course, by Chris Reynolds. Personal injury attorney, Chris Reynolds, attorney at law. If you live in Florida, specifically the greater Tampa Bay area of Florida, and you have a personal injury, be sure to get in contact with Chris Reynolds. ChrisReynoldsLaw.com. The intro and outro music to this and every episode of My Fellow Americans comes from the amazing and talented Mr. Joe Davi. That's Jodavi. Check him out on Facebook, SoundCloud. Go to his Bandcamp, jodavimusic.bandcamp.com. Buy all of his music, his entire discography. Thank you so much, Mr. Joe Davi. I'd like to thank Kroger for this delicious, purified drinking water that I drink on this and most episodes of My Fellow Americans. Buluvanaka. Oh, that is delicious Kroger flavored water. You can taste the Kroger in it. That's the best part of it. Shout out to Tehran Turks' Mominum as always. Folks, before we get to our guest, we continue our ongoing My Fellow Americans Libertarian Party platform plank explanation segment. That is the shortest name I could come up with for this segment, because really there is no good other way of explaining what it is. Basically, what we do, we devote a little bit of time every week for each episode to go over at least one plank in the Libertarian Party platform, explain what it means, and why we believe these things. Tonight we are going to explain plank 1.7, which is quite a mouthful. It is the crime and justice plank. More than likely, you cannot read what is there, but fear not, I actually can by getting really close to my monitor. Well, I got to be close to the mic too. So basically what the crime and justice plank of the Libertarian Party platform says is government force must be limited to the protection of the rights of individuals to life, liberty, and property, and governments must never be permitted to violate these rights. Laws should be limited in their application to violations of the rights of others through force or fraud, or to deliberate actions that place others involuntarily at significant risk of harm. Therefore, we favor the repeal of laws creating quote-unquote crimes without victims, such as gambling, the use of drugs for medicinal or recreational purposes, and consensual transactions involving sexual services. We support restitution to the victims to the fullest degree possible at the expense of the criminal or the negligent wrongdoer. The constitutional rights of the criminally accused, including due process, a speedy trial, legal counsel, trial by jury, and the legal presumption of innocence until proven guilty, must be preserved. We assert the common law right of juries to judge not only the facts, but also the justice of the law. We oppose the prosecutorial practice of overcharging in criminal prosecutions so as to avoid jury trials by intimidating defendants into accepting plea bargains. Nice short one to go over today. Anyway, like we've said before when we talk about, what the Libertarian Party platform is based on. It's based on the concept of self-ownership. You own yourself, you own your life, you own your body, you own your labor, and you own the product of your labor. So basically what this platform says is that any governing entity, whether it is a state form of government or a voluntary form of government or whatever, the only time that anyone should be punished or made to give restitution to someone else is if they have taken from someone else, if they've taken from you your life, your body, your labor, or your property. If they've stolen from you, if they've killed you, if they've beaten you, if they've raped you, if they've done something taking from you without your consent, now they have actually committed an act of aggression. There is a victim, you in this case. Or if you've done this to someone else, you have created a victim or many victims. And so there, for that reason, you need to have either some kind of punishment or some kind of restitution or something that is in keeping with what you did to them. So whatever you did to them, you owe something back. Or if you harm them, then you may need to be kept away from others so that you can't harm people, like if you committed murder or something like that. And ultimately, that's decided by the people in that community. But when the government goes in and puts you in jail because you took a substance that they don't think you should be able to take, even though you didn't directly harm anyone in doing that, that's wrong. If you have engaged in having sex with someone in exchange for money or property or something else, that's not really anyone's business except the people involved in that transaction. Putting you away when you didn't have any victim there, when you didn't actually take from someone against their will, is wrong. Another thing it talks about is the concept of what we call jury nullification, which means that juries, when looking at a case, should not just decide whether they think the the person did the crime that they were accused of, but whether it should be a crime to begin with. And we've talked about one of my heroes, Catherine Bernard in Georgia, who has very successfully used that concept of jury nullification to get, all or most of her clients that are caught up in drug crimes off of the charge. In fact, often the prosecutor refuses to try the case because they don't want to set precedent and end up nullifying the drug war in Georgia. That's a perfect example that jurors should be able to decide when they have something put in front of them that isn't an actual crime in their mind. For example, the sex trade, the drug trade, anything like that. That anything that doesn't have a victim, that they should be able to decide if that's even if they should even be tried for that. It also talks about how there is this common practice among prosecutors where they will charge you with like 1,000 different things and give you this really intimidating, group of basket of charges that they're going to charge you with the idea of trying to pressure you to plead guilty, even though you didn't do any of those things, and that should end. So basically, this whole platform just says because the only purpose of having any kind of justice system is to preserve ourselves, our lives, our rights, our bodies, and our property. Anything that goes outside of that shouldn't be a law to begin with. So that's basically what that means. There's many different, disagreements as to how that should be worded in terms of whether, we even acknowledge that a government should exist or anything like that. But that's the basics of it, that if you're not harming other people, then there's no reason for anyone to be harming you, to be prosecuting you or trying to do anything to you. So that's what that means. So now then, let's get to our guest. My guest tonight is the chair of the Montgomery County Libertarian Party. He's also the host of the Voice of Liberty podcast, of which I've been a guest. Great show. He is running for the Pennsylvania State Senate in the 12th District of Pennsylvania for 2022. And right now, he's fighting a very noble battle to keep the Republicans and Democrats from basically kicking all of the third-party candidates off the ballot this November, if they even let us vote this November. That remains to be seen. But anyway, my fellow Americans, please welcome to the show the amazing Mr. Henry Conoly. Henry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Spike.
Yeah, thank you. It was a real blast being on your show. I'm super to have you excited on mine. This time you got to see everything I do before going live, so that must have been fun for you watching me have my little mini existential crisis while waiting to go live. So I'm sure it was. I know when I'm a guest on someone else's show and I watch them have to go through all that, I breathe a sigh of relief because I don't have to do that. I just get to sit back and wait for them to ask me something. So I assume you felt some level of like, at least I'm not having to do this.
Definitely. Especially when your podcast is live and mine's pre-recorded.
Right.
See the difference in the crisis there. Pretty interesting.
It's crazy. Now, I will say this. When I'm recording, I find that I trip over my words more. Whereas when I'm live, it's just like, there's nothing I can do. Like, I can't go back and say it again. I'm live. And that gives me a level of freedom. But yes, that starting off and getting everything, making sure that we get on the right time and all that, that is an absolute nightmare. And I totally encourage you to do it too for your show. You'll have such a blast. So guys, be sure to comment with your questions and thoughts. And Henry and I will tell you if you are right or wrong. Now, Henry, this is your first time on the show, and what I usually ask guests who've never been on the show before is to kind of tell me the story of how you became a libertarian. Was it sort of an aha moment or sort of a gradual evolution over time? So tell us that. Tell us your ditty, your Henry ditty.
Well, so it's a very interesting situation for me. I was raised in a Republican household. I believed staunchly that I was a Republican. But I always had these non-Republican views, especially towards LGBTQ and certain things within the realm of typical leftism. And I kind of thought that I would be a Republican that would shift the narrative and help change the party and make things different.
Right.
Until 2016 came around.
Yep.
I watched the Republican primaries. I watched what was happening, and I saw the trend towards Donald Trump, and I immediately realized Mango Mussolini, there's no way I could vote for him, so I needed to find someone else and something else to vote for. Watching the Democrats, I knew I couldn't go that route. And then here comes along this guy, this weed-smoking, happy-go-lucky guy, Gary Johnson. I'm like, all right, whatever party put him up, that's got to be a party that's very interesting. So in 2016, that's when I got my first dip into being a libertarian. I sought out my local libertarian committee back in 2018, got involved. 2019, ran for office, and now 2020, I am the chair of the committee, and it's just been an upward battle since then. It's definitely been a party that I feel welcome in, that I really do feel like represents me as a person, ideologically, and outside of that politically.
Very cool. So you're actually one of the Gary Johnson people. So I it seems like obviously probably the biggest single person, including myself, that brought people into libertarianism, at least recently, was Ron Paul. And then you have people that were brought in by various, reading Rothbard or reading, some other libertarian thinker, Mises or Bakunin or any of these people that kind of brought them into libertarianism. So you actually came in from Gary Johnson, who was running for president.
Yeah, I came in from Gary Johnson. I had heard of Ron Paul. I had heard of different, as I learned, libertarian philosophers and thinkers, but I had never read their work. So Gary Johnson was my first dip into it, and then I started reading Ayn Rand and all the different libertarian thinkers, and that's kind of what grew my agreement with this party. Mind you, I've had an existential shift in the last about 5 to 6 months. I've gone from that lower right quadrant of libertarianism. I have shifted over to the left quadrant, and now I'm a full-blown libertarian socialist who gets called a statist.
Well, here's the thing. The beauty of being a libertarian, you're not really a real libertarian until you're being regularly told that you're not a real libertarian. So you're in good company. I have a question, because it's been interesting seeing people do their shifts between the different quadrants of libertarianism, which in my mind is usually more of an issue of preference of what a voluntarily organized society would look like, as opposed to Republicans and Democrats or people that are in the authoritarian left and right, like state communists and fascists and people like that, who are basically saying, I'm going to point a gun at you and force you to live the way that I want you to. My question is, would you say your move in towards libertarian socialism is more that you have changed what your preferred society would look like, or that you have, in studying it, seen that that is actually more what you've always been proposing, but you just didn't know the definitions quite as well?
So it's a combination of things. I would say that through part of it, it's been a shift in my life and my stance on what I want to see a community be. I've always been a person that believed that we should support each other, and that we should take care of each other, and that those who don't have the means to take care of themselves need to have someone to fall back on, not to take advantage of, but to be able to live. I watch those around me, coworkers who can't afford insulin and stuff like that are, they don't know what tomorrow is going to bring for them. So that whole libertarian socialist stance on community, on localization, on voluntary action really made an impact on me. But looking back on it in hindsight, I would say that I probably always agreed with that side, just didn't really understand it enough. And I have to give a shout out to my friend Mike Shipley for really being the first person to show me what that was all about. That's what really brought the change around.
Yeah, Mike Shipley does an amazing job representing his belief system, and to an often very skeptical audience. I will say that over time I have found that I am definitely more on the right side of the spectrum with libertarianism, but whereas before I believed that left libertarianism was incompatible with a truly voluntary society, I no longer believe that, and I don't have a reason to believe that. And it was in talking with people like Mike and then reading more. I had read a lot of the people on the, I guess, the bread pill side of things, on the left libertarian side of things, but I found that rereading it with still with a critical eye, but with more of an understanding of the concepts behind the precepts. So instead of using my set of definitions to delineate what they're saying, letting them decide, explain their definitions, and then going from that. And that's been very helpful. So I'm probably somewhat more on the agorist side than the straight up ANCAP side than as I used to be. And he's an anarcho-mutual. So do you consider yourself more like an anarcho-mutualist like Mike is, or anarcho-syndicalist, or not quite bothering to come up with a specific definition?
I'd like to stick to calling myself a voluntarist. I agree with the libertarian socialist ideals, but I will just call myself a voluntarist just because I have not really decided where in that specific area I agree on. And the other thing that I like to make sure people understand is just because I'm a libertarian socialist, I'm not a person that says, well, ANCAPs can't be ANCAPs.
Right.
I rootly believe in localization and really just bringing everything down. So I can have my libertarian socialist society I live in, ANCAPs can have theirs, and minarchists can set up their tiny little fake government that they want over in the corner, and we can all trade between each other and be happy.
Right. No, that's fair. That's fair. And that's what I like about the whole voluntarist umbrella, that, we're voluntarily deciding to do these things, and we can learn from each other. It's like I say many times, 7.5 billion people scattered across this planet are not going to voluntarily structure their societies the exact same way as everyone else. Like, that's not, if they were, they already would have. So the idea that, if the state stopped existing, that they'd all go, we're going to all do things exactly the way that this branch of libertarian thought does, and no other way. None of us, not a single one of us, want to have anything that even looks remotely different than that. So I'm a big fan of the whole thing. So that brings us to Voice of Liberty. Now, you started Voice of Liberty last year. I was a guest. Yeah. Very, very cool. You had a big guest, Spike Cohen. You've had a few big guests. But tell me about why you started Voice of Liberty and what we've got your link to Voice of Liberty in the show notes. But tell us about what got you doing that, what you hope to accomplish with Voice of Liberty, and where you're headed with it.
So Voice of Liberty was hatched. I think I started that about 2 weeks prior to my election in November. And at that point, I had kind of already seen where the election probably was going to swing. I had a figure that the Republican, Gary Andrus, who I respect a lot, he's a great guy. I had a feeling he was going to win. I had a very good feeling Corrine Landau, the Democrat, she was going to lose. And so I was like, all right, I need to have something to fall back on to take up this time that I've spent campaigning. So I came up with Voice of Liberty. I decided that was going to be my chance to give a voice to candidates that are running for office, whether it be local, state, or federal, because one of the things I learned the hardest about running for office is you have to hound the press and the media to try and even talk to you as a libertarian and a third-party candidate. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to hound the candidates to come on my show so they can spread their platform. So the best way I thought I could kick off Voice of Liberty was right after I became, and this is something that I'm proud of, and anybody watching from my committee, they'll love this. After I became a hashtag election spoiler, I started off running presidential candidates. I thought that was the best way to get the voice out there. And since then, I've been lucky enough to have everything from presidential candidates to vice presidential candidates to state and local candidates running for some really awesome offices. I've gained a good following, and I'm very happy that I've been able to do it. Down the road, I want to see this really expand to convention coverage, to being able to go out to all the different state conventions, national, if national happens, and just have a chance to give a voice to all the different people out there in the Libertarian Party.
That's really cool. Yeah, we here at Muddy Waters Media fully hope that we are able to have Coronavention, the Libertarian Coronavention in Austin, brought to you by the CDC and Purell hand sanitizer this time of in a couple months. That increasingly looks like that's not going to be happening, or at least it's going to be delayed. It's supposedly the LNC is working on that, but we'll see. So you actually started your show to bring your opponents on so that you could, I guess, basically like make them look bad, and then spoil. So you talk about you spoiled the election. You actually made it so that one of the candidates lost, right? Like you actually like took enough of their votes, convinced enough voters that you were a better option than them, that they actually lost, right?
Yeah, I put the vote difference, and if I remember correctly, I think it was 13 votes difference between the two of them. I secured 38 or 39 votes, and so by doing that, I just brought them so close that there was no chance that Korean Landauer was going to win the election, which was a pretty cool thing for me. I didn't realize it until Jen Moore, who's now my vice chair, pointed it out to me, and I was like, wow, okay, I just did something. And so that's just something that I've been carrying as a sign of pride.
That's really cool. Listen, if we aren't at a point in different elections, whether it's presidential, vice presidential, state house, state senate, whatever, governor, whatever the position is, if we aren't able to actually win the election, if nothing else, if we're able to move the needle enough so that the other candidates have to scramble to change their positions, and even if, because politicians lie, even if they're having to lie differently, they're at least giving credence to your ideas. So as where before they would go, oh, those libertarians, they're ridiculous, they sound stupid. But if you potentially can take enough of their votes where they have to now actually say, oh, well, actually that sounds like a good idea. They're giving legitimacy to your idea and helping move that Overton window closer to what you want, changing the discussion from whether we should grow government the way Republicans want us to or grow government the way Democrats want us to, injecting the conversation of, should we even be growing government? Or, I don't know, should we maybe be reducing government? Or, here's a fancy one, do we even need a government? Just moving it. So even if you're spoiling the election, which I don't like the idea that you took someone's votes, those people who have agency voted for you because they thought you were the best option. But if you're able to move the needle enough so that it at least kind of scares the other candidates, that's a move in the right direction, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I had the coolest thing within my town, Hatfield, which is where I ran. I ran for Hatfield Ward 5 commissioner.
Okay.
I had pretty much a very specific group of people, or a couple different specific groups of people that voted for me. Ones that couldn't stomach Jerry Andrus, but couldn't vote for the Democrat either. Hmm. Ones that couldn't stomach Korean Landauer, but couldn't vote for Jerry Andrus either.
Right.
Or I had the ones that sat there and went, wait, there's a third option. I don't have to vote for these two idiots. Sweet, I'm going for him. And, because traditionally, roughly every 8 to 12 years, the seat flips from one party to the other. So they were super excited to have that chance to have a third option, someone different that is just not heard of in the town. And I also had the chance to dispel so many of those foul rumors about what libertarians believe in, which is really nice.
So you did kind of at your local level, which, and it sounds like, so it's sort of like a swing area, right? Like you said, it goes back and forth between the Republicrats here and the Republicrats there. So. Yep. You've kind of done on that level, sort of the same thing that, to some extent, the same thing that Vermin and I are trying to accomplish with our campaign, where we're trying to get votes from people who can't stand Trump but aren't going to vote for Biden, and people who can't stand Biden and aren't going to vote for Trump. And there's a tremendous amount of overlap between both parties of people that aren't sure if they can't stand Biden but won't vote for Trump, or if they can't stand Trump but won't vote for Biden. And we're sort of that third option of, hey, we're neither of these terrible lying sociopaths that can't form a proper sentence, a complete sentence. We're, try us out. And then that gives the opportunity for us to change the conversation in those areas, sort of like you were saying. It would dispel some of these, for those who have heard of libertarianism, unfortunately, a lot of them have not heard good things. And that's been because of propaganda against us. And it's been because of some really garbage hot takes from some people who are libertarian on what libertarianism is. And maybe that's not their bag to explain why they're a libertarian. Maybe they could just leave that to people who are able to demonstrate empathy and
libertarians.
Yeah, well, and I mean, some of them are actual libertarians. They just really are not good at the part about influencing others and making friends and building like they're good libertarians, and I'm certainly not taking anything away from them. Not everyone is good at explaining a belief system to someone else. Not everyone is good at doing it and then being told, well, that sounds selfish, that sounds stupid, why would I want that? And then still being able to have a good conversation. A lot of times people will respond back with, well, you're stupid, or, you're selfish, or, no, my rights matter more than your grandma, or whatever, whatever they're saying right now, like maybe, not necessarily having the best way of doing it. And so that's what Vermin and I are doing. And it sounds like that's what you did. I would be remiss not to bring this up. Your show, and even right now, you have the sexiest lighting of any libertarian podcast. We've all trying to do our own thing, right? Like there are different libertarian podcasts. Some are, I try to reach out more to non-libertarians in my messaging. Others are, they're big about, promoting the message within the movement and the party. There are others that, they want to distinguish themselves as the most outrageous or whatever else. And your thing seems to be, from what I can tell, that you have the most sensual lighting of any libertarian. Is that a black light?
No, that's actually a professional concert lighting system that I have hidden behind me on the floor. Outside of my full-time job and outside of my political activism, I also do concert lighting. And of course, due to coronavirus, that's out of business right now.
Oh gosh,
so,
yeah.
What I did was, when I started the podcast, I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's implement some of these lights and create some really nice lighting scenes behind me and stuff like that. And well, that's how you get a blue room behind me.
It's cool. It looks. I'm not making fun of you. Like it really looks great. Like I remember when I had you on, or when I was on your show, and I think it was like you had like a blackish purple background, and I'm looking at. I'm like, I just have a beige wall behind me, and like this is just the accent wall in our guest room. And I thought I looked nice, and then I look at yours, and I'm like, ooh, I need to do something sexy with mine. So I still haven't, because there's no way my wife's going to let me put black lights or concert lighting in here. But anyway, a boy can dream. So here's why I brought you on. Well, first of all, I brought you on because you're great, and I've been wanting to return the favor ever since you had me on your show, which you were so gracious to do. We have a real bad situation going. Oh, no, actually, first of all, let's talk about... So you're running for the 12th district of the Pennsylvania State Senate. So you're running for state senator, not this cycle, but for 2022, or I guess it'll be the next time it's up in 2022. What are what made you want to get into that race, and what are the things that you find to be the biggest issues facing people in your district and in Pennsylvania?
So the first thing I'll say is that I am unofficially running for that position.
Okay.
Of course, I haven't gain the blessing of the local committee, and
right.
I would not jump the gun on that ever, although I want to start getting people that follow my candidate page to start seeing where I'm heading.
Mm-hmm.
So running for Ward 5 commissioner, that was that nice entry point into politics. It gave me an idea of how to run a campaign. It was a grassroots campaign, and I thought, okay, the next thing I got to do will be something that will require a true campaign. And that's something I want the experience of. I would have ran election this current cycle, but one of my good friends, John, he is running for PA 53, House of Representatives, and I would never take that shot against him because he has a excellent rapport with the current incumbent, so he can really use some current rapport with him to really gain traction on his election.
Right.
Looking within my age range and what I'll be eligible for, the state Senate District 12 was really the next thing that I could look at. So looking at it, the best thing I can say right now is that my analysis on everything, and of course I'm still plugging away at it and kind of getting some ideas of where I'm going to stick to, is my whole point of running is to give a bigger voice to the idea of localization and voluntary action. And that's why I want to run for that office, because I think even if I can spoil the election, which it would be nice to be a two-time election spoiler, I deserve a nice belt like WWE has if I do that.
Right.
The thing about that is I could probably gain enough attention, because as far as I know, no third-party candidate from the Libertarian Party, from the Green Party, from really anybody has ran for that position. And if I'm wrong, someone will correct me on this. So I can use the fact that I'd be the first third-party candidate running for it, the youngest person running for it, to really hopefully gain some media attention to the whole purpose of localization and voluntary action. Because in the end of the day, that's where I want to go.
Right.
I don't see the purpose for a federal government. I don't see the purpose for, honestly, a state government. I want to see everything come down to the local level where it impacts us the most. So all of my platforms, all of my policies will, as I craft them, will be crafted around the idea of, hey, you live in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. Lansdale is going to make sure that they suit their government to fit you. Don't worry about us up on the state level. We're just doing what the minimally PA state constitution mandated items are.
Right.
And what we do, we should be so unimportant that we aren't a concern of yours.
Right.
And that's the whole idea that I'm going for.
Right. And with the idea that you're promoting, sort of doing agitprop for the idea that we don't need any of this to begin with, that, you know, we're trying to reduce it as much as possible, but also none of this is necessary, and we're actually just doing harm reduction with the idea that we should be against all of this harm. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you vote Republican or Democrat, or frankly, whether you vote Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian. We're just trying to promote a message of getting rid of this government. And so, you know, a vote for me is a vote for moving us in the direction of reducing and possibly even eliminating government. And here's why you would want that. So, I mean, that's what we're doing on the national level, and it's what you're doing in District 12 in Pennsylvania. So that's awesome. Now, before we get into open the ballots, the buttons here. So you've got, it's actually easier to see here. You've got your vermin button because you are on Team Supreme.
Right over here.
Yeah, your title is, you're the love gunner.
Yeah.
You're the love gunner for our team. We have some very interesting team names. And then you've got your, is that the no tanks, no helicopters bottom unity sticker here?
That it is.
Okay, the button, and then you got your Libertarian button. So you've got, I have my flare. I never wear my flare. I never wear, like, I even have my taxation as theft hat. I'm terrible with the wearing flare and stuff like that. So anyway, the reason that main reason I wanted to have you on is right now we are having a situation with this COVID pandemic where, in addition to all the other terrible things that the government is exploiting this crisis to do against us. We saw today that they passed a relief bill, and I made a video about that, about how it's actually just a giant pork bill where they're running up trillions of dollars of debt that we all have to pay, and basically handing almost all of that money to big banks and big businesses and Wall Street and themselves, their own government programs, and giving us back a check for $1,200. They're giving us back basically like 8 cents on their 12 cents on the dollar, 10 cents, something like that. You know, a fraction of the money they're taking from us. They're giving us a check back. Here, treat yourself. Oh yeah, by the way, you're going to be paying off this debt for the next 30 years. So they did that. But another thing they're doing is they're basically using this pandemic as a reason to kick everyone off the ballot that isn't a Republican or a Democrat. Give us a little bit of background about what they're doing with this pandemic before we get into what Open the Ballots is about.
So with the virus, whether you want to call it, SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 or whatever you want to refer to it, because there are a few different scientific names, as we know.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're through them telling us to shut down, to social distance, all of these things. I know on one side they're thinking that they're going to help and solve problems, but on the same token, I guarantee you an ulterior motive that they have is they know that this is going to have an impact on the parties that challenge them constantly, Libertarians being one of them, Greens being the other, because as we move into Open the Ballots, and when I talk on it, this is not just a Libertarian fight. I'm reaching out to third parties in general to fight this fight. They are essentially making it next to impossible for us to do what we need to do. And so that's where this whole idea of Open the Ballots came from, is a coalition that's ready to raise hell, quite figuratively, and put them in a position where they have to either purposely exclude us and exclude voices and commit acts of voter suppression, or they have to start admitting that the challenges they put in place for us to get on the ballots are completely preposterous and don't need to exist.
Right.
And that's where we're at right now.
Right. So basically, long story short of what they're doing, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, most states have a requirement that if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, they're automatically on the ballot. It doesn't matter. There isn't a single area where Republicans and Democrats aren't automatically on the ballot. But in most states, if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, if you're a Libertarian, if you're Constitution Party, Green Party, DSA, whatever, if you're one of these third party or independent candidates, the only way you can get on the ballot is by getting a certain number of petitions signed. In some, it's only a few hundred petitions. In other states, it's like in New York, it's like 200,000 petitions or something like that. Like you have to get a ton of signatures on your petition. Depending on which state, they all have different levels, and then you have to pay all these ridiculous fees to get on the ballot. And then they do their best to try to invalidate as many of the signatures. Like it's a whole spiel. But basically, if you have enough dedicated people to go out to big events and hand out petitions and say, hey, we're just trying to get you as many choices as you can for the upcoming election. Just sign here. You don't have to vote for us or anything else. We're just trying to get signatures to get on the ballot. And usually, if you have enough dedicated people that can get out there into different big events and parades and fairs and whatever else, and just ask people to sign to allow more to allow your party and candidates on the ballot, usually you can get enough signatures for that. Easier in some states than others, but for the most part, you can do that. Well, right now, the government has shut down everything. And even if they haven't shut down, even in the places where they haven't fully shut down things, no one's really gathering right now. And no one wants to answer the door and touch something, touch a ballot, touch a petition that everyone else has touched to sign it at a time when we're being told to stay 6 feet away from everyone. The last thing they want to do is open their door for strangers. So it's made it functionally impossible for Libertarian candidates and others, Green Party and everything else, to get on the ballot. So in a way, by keeping these requirements in place and making it functionally impossible for you to do what you need to do, most of these states are basically saying, yeah, no, screw you. If you're not a Republican or a Democrat, you're not going to be a choice on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. And I mean, speaking specifically within Pennsylvania, state level candidates, they're 5,000 signatures, if I remember correct. And then local level candidates, they're 10% of the highest vote getter in the last election. And that type of thing is very tough to accomplish in this situation. As you were saying, no one wants to open a door, grab a piece of paper that, 25, 30 other people have touched and a pen that, 25 or 30 other people have touched,
right,
and sign a paper risking getting COVID-19.
Exactly.
Or NCOV, whatever you want to call it.
Correct.
It's preposterous. And yeah, exactly. By shutting everything down, it's made it next to impossible for us to do this. And it's created a situation where unless we take action, not just as the Libertarian Party, but as third parties in general, and ensure that there's a voice out there for all of our supporters, there's just going to be Republicans and Democrats, and it's going to come back down to that horrible phrase, voting for the lesser of two evils, and we're going to be stuck right back where we were, and especially going into 2020, where the 2019 election cycle was a killer election cycle, speaking specifically on the Libertarian Party.
Right.
2020, we could really accomplish a lot, and if we do good in 2020, then 2021 can be even more killer. But in the situation we're in, we're going to lose one of those stepping stones that we need.
Right. And it's a general election, so there's way more attention than in the especially in the, so 2019 is not even a midterm election. It's like an off-year election, and the Libertarians did pretty well with that. 2018 and the even-numbered years, or every even-numbered year that isn't, a general election, those are the midterm years, which get a little bit more attention, but the big attention is in 2020, 2024, 2028, the general elections that have the presidential ballot on it. That's always the one that has the biggest turnout of any of the other elections, which is still only just above 50% because half of the voters, have given up on electoral politics. Half of the eligible voters have given up on electoral politics, and I don't blame them. But so basically, they're just trying to shut everyone out. And again, I'm 50-50 on whether we're even going to be able to vote in November. I can fully see them using this as an excuse to if this thing is still nasty in the fall, for them to say, oh no, we're going to have to do it sometime next year. But assuming that we're still having an election in November, then this would be absolutely terrible for people not to have an option. They already try to convince everyone that you have to choose from the two parties because the other ones don't have a chance. But to actually just remove them completely makes it even worse. Now, one of our followers, Fotini Henderson, brought this up, and you actually have this here in some of your goals. You are trying to, first of all, seek eliminating the signature requirement, at least for this cycle. Now, how would that look? Are you trying to say allow all third parties on it, or just anyone that qualified in the last election cycle? Or what would that look like if you had your druthers and the states went along with just removing the signature requirements? How would they actually get on? They would just request, or it would just be whatever parties qualified last time, or how would you want that?
So, I mean, I got to be realistic with certain things. If I got my wishes and I was able to get the signature requirements waived for this cycle, the first thing that I got to speak on there is getting those signature requirements waived for this cycle will give us a basis to fight to have them waived in their entirety.
Right.
Which would be the end goal of this whole thing.
Right.
As far as what candidates, what parties could take part if we were able to get the signature requirements eliminated, my opinion on it is this. As long as that candidate or party does the state filing fee or whatever it is, because let's be honest, I'm not going to get them, and we're not going to get them to get rid of everything.
Right.
Whether it's a $25 filing fee or whatever it is, if they can pay it, if they can, show the intent through that to be on the ballot, then sure, let them be on the ballot, because that is true democracy and that is true freedom. Everybody then will have the candidate on the ballot that they agree with, that they can vote for, and then we're going to get a real good idea of where this country stands. And that's where I kind of look at this.
So try to, if at all possible, get it so that the signature requirement's completely removed, but at the very least in this cycle. But even if it's just in this cycle, try to maybe use that as a challenge in the future of saying, well, we didn't need it this cycle and everything went fine. And so basically, whatever state filing requirements they have, if you can meet that, you end up on the ballot. And if that's not something that they're okay with, fall back on some kind of electronic signature approval if signature requirements not waived. And that's what one of our commenters asked. Is that kind of a backup idea that, to have some kind of system set up where you can say, whether it's a change.org petition or something like that, saying we got this many people to sign it?
Correct. So of course, the main goal, waive the signature requirement. Of course, you got to have a negotiating tool. I mean, I work in an RV dealership, and all of our salesmen, of course, they have the MSRP, and then they have that bottom line they can negotiate down to.
Right.
And it's the same idea here. My MSRP, if you want to call it, is eliminate the signature requirement. But completely, I'm willing to negotiate down to, hey, let's do electronic signatures. Now, how could we do them? Set up a blockchain site. That way the security is really, really tough. A change.org petition, as you said, would be another good one. Or even the candidate's website being able to collect, based upon unique IP addresses, those signatures. And then we can present that to the state and say, hey, listen, this candidate did get the 50 signatures or whatever it is.
Right.
Here's the unique IP addresses or whatever to verify it. And then there we go. Let that candidate on the ballot. Let that candidate's supporters have a voice, and then we can rock along and prove why there needs to be more than two choices.
Right. And I mean, there's a way to do it. There's definitely a way to do it. If there are plenty of online petitions that people take seriously. And again, this isn't the vote. You aren't saying you have to elect us because we had this many. You're simply saying, listen, we've demonstrated that there is enough attention for our party to justify having us on. If, like you said, if we can't just completely eliminate some kind of threshold for signatures, because I get the idea of a threshold for signatures, because then otherwise you could end up with an 82-page long ballot that's, got everyone that's, I get it. Is that ideal democracy? Yes. Do I understand the idea that you at least have to get, I don't know, a couple hundred people to say they'd even be interested in you to get on there? I understand that. That I understand. But the problem is, like you said, in this cycle, you can't. Like you'd actually be breaking the law, and more importantly, you'd be potentially putting people's health and safety at risk by going around and spreading this sheet of paper it's, hey, you want to join my little vector club that I've created here? Like it's, for something like this, I get why it has to be waived and why there'd be no reason in the first place to not have it be electronic. One of our commenters, Fotini, said she talked about DocuSign, which is what she's used for real estate transactions. Like there are, systems that, log your IP and have an encrypted way of checking and making sure that you're not just signing it 50 times, or 100 times or whatever. So I think that's perfect.
DocuSign was actually one of the things we talked about in our planning meeting as a tool to be used, because it's already accepted as a legal signature, which we were sitting there thinking, well, what if we were to just take a bunch of ballot sheets, get people to fill them out on DocuSign, and then we take that to the courts and say, listen, it's used in almost any other legal format. Why is it not legal here? This candidate got 50 signatures on DocuSign, 50 independent IP addresses. This is it. They were practicing social distancing. They were trying not to spread the virus. They were trying not to break the law. Right. And they did the effort to get the signatures needed to be on the ballot. Recognize that. Yeah. So that's that whole fallback thing. And just quickly back to the whole elimination of signatures. That's why I sit there and say we got to be realists. Us libertarians, we like to sit there and live in this like utopian world. And we can't always live there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's common across all third parties. We have that utopian state we want to be in, but we got to be realists about it. That's why I say if we get rid of the signature requirement that, a state filing fee or something like that, maybe a tiered fee based upon the office running for something to show that you have put in the effort to run for that office. Right. That way, it's not an 82-page ballot sheet and we're spending 5 hours in a booth trying to fill it out.
Right. And I mean, again, I'm not against the 82-page ballot, although if it's electronic, you're having to scroll like this the whole time, and or it's like a real old system, and you got to press the little down button, and you're like, I just want to vote for him.
We just started using Scantrons like we're back in high school.
So wow. Do you have to bring a number 2 pencil or
fill in the bubble and then scan that thing in? So you can imagine how long that will take.
Really?
Yes.
It would be this like super long scan. It would look like when you used to play skee ball and then it would spit out the tickets. That's what your Scantron would look at like with all the names on the ballot. No, I'm just looking for Henry. Where's Henry? There we go. Where's Vermin and Spike? There we go. Oh, Vermin and Spike. So I get why they want to try to weed out people that aren't going to get 4 votes. I get it. I understand that, but there's a way to make it electronic. There's a way to make it where you can do this in a legit way, especially with the conditions we're under. So I do understand that. So you're also working on raising awareness, which is what we're trying to do right now, to the fact that there are these major barriers and roadblocks that third parties face just trying to get on the ballot. A lot of people don't realize, they think, oh, the reason you're not on the ballot is because you suck or whatever. And it's like, no, it's because the 2 main parties, which in my mind I call them the Republicrats. They are one party. They have 2 heads, but they're basically going to give you the same thing. Endless spending, endless war, endless caging of people for victimless crimes, endless taxation, endless infringing upon your lives, rights, bodies, and property. It doesn't matter which side you vote for. But we'll pretend for a minute that there are 2 parties and that you're being given 2 distinct options. They've made it so that those are your only 2 distinct options, and they happen to both just suck a lot, which the vast majority of voters recognize that they suck. And yet they don't vote third party, often because they're not on the ballot. Or they had to spend all of their budget just getting on the ballot, whereas the Republicans and Democrats are automatically on the ballot and don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and with that in mind, one of the things that people got to understand within the Libertarian Party specifically here is how privileged we are being the third largest party, because we have a very large grassroots effort behind us. We got a lot of people that we can get behind our campaigns, get out there and be petitioning. And our state and local parties are, let me rephrase this, some of the local parties, most of the state parties, and of course national, they have the money to be out there paying for paid petitioners.
Right.
When we really talk about the issues that we face, I'm really thinking about the other third parties too, because I want to see true democracy. I want to see everybody having a voice. And so like the Green Party, they're not nearly as large as us. They don't have the money. They don't have the backing to be doing it. The DSA, they don't, even though, you know, they tend to go for that fringe Democrat. They don't. And the other third parties that are out there, they definitely don't have that support. So, when you really look at it, there's reasons we won't make it on the ballot. And that's because there's so many roadblocks and hoops to jump through. And, you know, especially when you're fresh to running for office, some of those hoops that you're jumping through, you don't realize that you were supposed to jump through the one that's flaming and the one that's not flaming, and all these different things, because nothing's clear.
Right.
And so we need to make it simpler. We need to make it more free. And that's what we're going to raise hell about. That's
fair. No, I mean, it's great that you're doing this. I want to go through some of these comments about you. You've got some fans here.
Oh, God.
Respect to you. I hope you have a pink light too. I can't believe he just called Minarchy fake. That's Jacob. Minarchy's fake, Jacob. Let's see what else here. Love your lighting. Love your flair. What else? You look like Post Malone. I know, and she followed up, and Kalani Johnson, she followed up and said, I know he knows he looks like Post Malone. Any comment on that? Any comment on Post Malone?
I mean, Post Malone, he's a pretty cool dude. If I remember, didn't he do something with Ozzy Osbourne? I don't listen to a ton of rap, so I mean, I'm a metalhead and a folk artist follower. So, doesn't he have a bunch of face tattoos? Doesn't that kind of make it hard for me to look like him?
So she said you look like Post Malone without the tattoos.
Okay.
So like more of a clean cut Post Malone. And yes, he did do a song with Ozzy called "Take What You Want."
Okay, so then I've seen that. Okay, I can kind of see the resemblance.
I kind of see it.
And I hadn't built up as much roundness in my face. People used to call me Sheldon from oh God, I'm blanking on
the Big Bang. Yeah.
Big Bang. When I had my glasses on, my old glasses, I looked more like him. Also, when I was thinner and didn't have a beard.
Oh wow! If you don't have a beard, you look like Sheldon, kind of ish. I mean, not exactly, but I see that.
About 25 pounds ago, yeah.
Wow. So Sheldon with a little bit more weight and a beard and tattoos is Post Malone.
There we go.
That is hilarious. We learned so much on this show. That's funny. Okay, so your goals, so like you've said, you're basically you're trying to partner with other third parties and independents, because this isn't, I mean, ultimately our goal is to get the Libertarian Party on there, but this isn't just for us. Like, this is to try to, you're not going to be able to break what we call the duopoly, or what I call the Republicrats, without bringing in allies. Even if we disagree, even if we disagree with Green Party people almost as much as we disagree with Republicans and Democrats, we can at least agree, or Constitution Party or Reform Party or whatever else. As long as they're not like Nazis, we can ally with them and you know, go for the same goal that we have here, to be able to get on the ballot, not because we spent a frickin' $2 million across the country and spent countless, you know, hours of productivity just to get signatures, but because we deserve to be on the ballot too. If we're going to pretend, I'm gonna do I'm doing anarchist stuff now. If we're going to pretend that government has some legitimate authority over us. That the fact that they sit in these, these marble buildings and sign fancy sheets of paper and put pieces of metal on people and order them to go rob us, and that the fact that they do it this way and call themselves the government and pretend, they make sure to write down on a sheet of paper, I have the authority to do this vested in me by myself. That the fact that they went through all of that makes them somehow different than any other violent thief. If we're going to pretend that that's the case, then the system that they have given us, that they've imposed on us, for us to choose who's going to lord over us or not, should be really democratic. It should be us choosing whomever we want and not having to spend a fortune and scrape and beg the state to allow us on the ballot. Like, if there's some minimal thing just to make sure that you have even a few people supporting you, that's one thing. But to have it where there's this massive threshold for you to even be able to have someone vote for you, in my mind, just completely does away with the whole idea that we are consent of the governed. It's just one more chip in that block, right? So all that to say, I got off on a big rant there. I know you agree with me, but the point of all that is you're going to be working or are working actively with other third parties to help push this message. Open the ballots is not a partisan Libertarian Party thing. It was started by Libertarians, but this is a multi-partisan, third party effort, correct?
Yeah, so when I looked at things when it came to this, I felt like that it would be very hypocritical of us as the Party of Liberty, the Party of Freedom, to just leave this as a Libertarian-only thing. So that's when I brought up the idea of, okay, we need to reach out to the Green Party, we need to reach out to the DSA, and whoever else we can find, because one, they deserve a spot on the ballot just as much as we do, and two, they shouldn't be jumping through the hoops that we have to either, and three, we're stronger when all of us unite together.
Right.
The duopoly, they can continue to pick at one party. But when you have multiple parties uniting, saying, okay, end this, get rid of these draconian methods that we have to go, or draconian steps that we have to go through to get on the ballot, then it starts to become a problem for them, because we raised a ton of hell. We can get ourselves onto, even the mainstream news and raise hell on there. I mean, even if they cut us out, if we get 5 minutes to sit there and rant, that's going to go viral. That's
5 minutes more than we would have gotten. Exactly. Yep.
Exactly. So if we can take those steps, and you know what, the DSA or the Green Party or constitutionalists, they might have lawyers within their ranks that we don't have within the Libertarian Party.
Right.
And then when we put the lawyers that exist within the Libertarian Party with their lawyers and allow their heads to come together, well, suddenly we're picking out constitutional bases for why we should be on the ballot in every single state. And next, we're making it really hard. We're making it to the point where the state and the Secretary of State, the governor, the Attorney General, and then, of course, just the House and Senate have to decide, are we going to violate the state constitution, or are we going to step aside and allow people that could potentially start gaining victories and wiping us out, or balancing the slate at least, get on the ballot? And that's the real end game, is creating a situation where they don't have an argument anymore. They have an argument now. We don't want them to have an argument anymore. Right.
And if nothing else, just having more people and showing that this isn't just the Libertarian Party wants to get on the ballot. It's we want to open the ballots. I mean, that open the ballots doesn't just mean for the Libertarian Party. And that's a powerful thing to have multiple parties. The Transhumanist Party, I'm sure, would love to be a part of this. All of these different parties to get together and say, listen, whatever we disagree on, we agree that we are sick of having to waste all this money and time. Honestly, it's time more than money in some cases, where you're just wasting countless hundreds of thousands of hours across the country collecting signatures just to get on a ballot. And like you said, whatever it takes to get in front of people for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, 10 minutes, the social media has done an incredible job. And one, I guess if you have to call it a silver lining of this whole lockdown thing is, the Republicans and Democrats can't, try to present themselves as the only popular option anymore, because they can't get in front of crowds of they can't fill stadiums and spend taxpayer money on concessions to fill stadiums for their events to make them look like the popular option. They have to sit in front of a webcam just like me. And they don't have the experience in doing that. So we actually make them look like the amateurs. I'm ranting again. But the bottom line is that, we have an opportunity to show them that we're every bit as valid as they are. And this Open the Ballots, this was the catalyst to start it. But I see this as long after we have, because we're going to survive this. We're going to get past this pandemic. Once the pandemic's over, once the immediate chaos from that is over, there's always going to be this push. This starts a push for all of the candidates, to all of the parties, the third parties, to stop this ridiculous chokehold that the FEC and the state election boards have. Now, you had sent me some stuff here that are your your short-term goals and your strategies to push this forward. Talk to me about that. What is the strategy that you and the other people in Open the Ballots are using to try to push this forward not just between now and November, but between now moving forward?
So that's the beautiful thing about this is anybody that wants to get, I'll say this first, anybody that wants to get involved in the initiative, again, no matter what party, third party you exist in, if you're an independent, hashtag Open the Ballots is the group name. Currently, it's only a group. We're creating the page. We're working on logos and stuff like that.
Cool.
The beauty of it right now is we're just starting to formulate some really intense planning. Right now, we are putting together a press release that will be more of a press release packet that will go out to all of these different news agencies that have already been discussing how COVID-19 is going to impact the elections,
right,
how it's going to impact third parties in the election, because believe it or not, that has been said. But what I don't think they have, and that's where we're really picking up, is they haven't had a third party actually unite, or a singular third party come on and go, understand what we go through, because those in the media, they don't understand.
They have no clue.
So we're not creating a movement per se. We are tagging onto a movement. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, and a bunch of others have already discussed this topic. We're just tagging onto it. So we're going to be creating press releases, and we're going to be sending them out all over the place.
Cool.
One of the things we're doing is the Libertarian Party did highlight about 10 states that are going to be very, very tough for us, and that the national party is already working to petition in and to get things overturned. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to tag team hounding their governor, their secretary of state, their attorney generals, if we have to, House and Senate members. We're going to hound them on Twitter. We're going to hound them on Facebook. If we have a person in that state, we'll put them in their Capitol building and hound them as they're going in and out of the building.
Nice.
We don't care. We're one of the things, Spike, you know this as a libertarian yourself. One of the things we are really good at is hounding people without the fear of being arrested.
Right.
So usually when you have a libertarian dive into a movement like this, they will go do that even if the state threatens them.
Oh, especially if the state threatens them. That makes it even sweeter. Like, I'm even more likely to do it, yeah.
But so, we're going with the press releases on the press side of things because we want to get into that conversation that's already happening. Because if we can get third parties into the media, and we can get a representative from the Libertarian Party, from the Green Party, from the DSA, all these different political parties into the media, suddenly we're on the news, that whole playing into at least just getting our 5 minutes of fame there. And then if we're out there hounding their representatives, their
right,
governors, secretaries of state and all, now we are going to be on their mind. So that leads us into the final thing, which is just the topic of pointing out to the general public how wrong and how twisted it is, and how much of a lock on the electoral system there is. Because, John Q. Public or Jane Q. Public, the average American doesn't necessarily understand this. They don't understand that the reason you rarely see libertarians, or don't see libertarians, let me rephrase that, on the presidential debate stage, is because the Commission on Presidential Debates is a Republican and Democratic entity.
Right.
And then on the state And the local levels, they have such a lock on what it takes. Most Americans don't understand that. So by us pointing this out, by us raising hell and getting all these different entities talking, suddenly now the average American is going, wow, I didn't know that was what they go through. And now we can possibly get them to kind of see what the two-party duopoly held over top of them as a lock, and maybe they'll start looking at us. And suddenly, maybe we'll turn this into a membership group, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love your idea of hounding people on social media and in person, but especially on social media, because, I mean, it's effective. You can send letters and the press releases are a great idea. Getting in front of the media is a great idea. I was recently interviewed by local news right here in my guest room, and when I wasn't telling them about, you know, cheesy bread and you know, the badger, I was explaining the kind of what we go through as a third party to just even get on the ballot.
Yep.
This is someone who reports on politics. He had no clue. He didn't get it. He didn't know. Well, how would he? You know, talking to Republicans and Democrats, they're certainly not going to talk about it. So no, it's a good thing that you're doing that. But social media, hitting them on social media, you can send people letters, you can call their switchboard and everything else. Those are all great things to do. There's something special about social media because you can start social media is like calling them on speakerphone for the entire world to hear. And it encourages others to pile on and do the same thing if you have an effective message that you're hitting them with. And that's a very powerful thing to be able to start a Twitter hound campaign or a Facebook hounding campaign to do that. So that's really great that you're doing that. So
and that's what I was going to say about the Twitter side of that, especially. And I've recently started really delving into Twitter. I use it to hound Donald Trump as much as I can. I mean, Mango Mussolini. Let me rephrase that.
Right.
The beauty of that is if we get enough of us, you know, talking about opening the ballots, talking about the hassle that goes on to get on the ballots, on their Twitter, that's permanent for the world to see, as you said. That is as close to a bullhorn in the crowded stateroom as we can get.
That's correct. Yep.
And trust me, if I can get my butt into the PA state, the state building and get a bullhorn and stand in front of all of those people, I will.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of doing that, Twitter gives me a really good opportunity to do it. And guess what? I don't have to worry about getting arrested and figuring out all the legal fees associated with it.
You don't even have to leave your house, which is perfect right now because with social distancing, you really can't get in front of them. So, I mean, again, the internet comes to save the day. We are in an opportunity to really make them uncomfortable where they can't try to pretend that they can only be on social media right now. Like literally, they can only exist on these platforms. And so if every time they come there, all that's waiting for them is a bunch of people hounding them about stuff, they have to respond to it. It would be like if they went to if Donald Trump goes to a stadium and it's just filled with people going, open the ballots. Why the hell won't you let the Libertarians and the Green Party on there, schmuck? And they're saying it the same volume he is. Like it would be, I mean, you couldn't ignore that. And so it's actually really, again, this is a terrible thing that we're going through. I'm not downplaying that. I'm saying that a very small silver sliver lining of the terrible, the lockdown and the pandemic and everything that we're facing is that it's putting politicians, they're on equal footing with us in a lot of ways. They can get the disease just like we can. They got to stay locked down just like we have to. And I'm not even talking about lockdown for the law. They're having to stay locked down for their health and safety, just like the rest of us are having to be, smart and safe and social distancing and self-quarantining and all that stuff. They're having to do it too. And when they come on the same internet the rest of us are on, they got to take it from us, just as bad as we have to take it from them. So it's really, really impressive. So Muddied Waters Media is 100% behind Open the Ballots. The Vermin for President and Spike Cohen for Vice President campaigns are 100% behind this. We are working with all of the various Libertarian Party state affiliates and the National Party. We're all getting behind this thing 100%, and we're going to, spread it out to Green Party and Constitution Party, Reform Party, anyone else who wants to participate in it, and really push this forward. So I really appreciate you coming on. Before I give you a chance to do final thoughts, would you like to do Final My Fellow Americans? It's a little game that I do.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So we have basically, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer a series of questions. And these questions are, where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer a series of questions, which is nowhere near enough time to do so, but that's just how it is. I don't know what to tell you. It's just how it is, Henry. If you don't like it, then, you shouldn't have signed the social contract. Anyway, for this installment of Final My Fellow Americans, I'm actually going to do the same questions that I asked my previous guest, Jordan Logue, but I'm going to name a series of terrible things, and you're going to tell me how long it's going to take for that thing to eradicate all of humankind. So each thing, how long in days, weeks, months, years, decades, whatever, how long do you think it's going to take for it to kill off every single last human being on this godforsaken planet? Is that, do you need time, or you ready to go?
Let's go.
Okay, so 30 seconds on the clock. Good luck. COVID-19.
I would say about 7 to 8 years.
7 to 8 years? Okay. Climate change.
20 to 30 years.
Okay. The ending of net neutrality.
It won't.
Okay. Goat AIDS.
Goat AIDS. You know what? Let's go with 6 months.
Wow. Okay. That guy named Jeff who owns a nuke.
Literally 1 year.
1 year? Okay. Pop country.
Pop country will kill everybody in a day.
Max Abramson registering as a Democrat.
Let's see. Democratic Party will launch every nuke we have about 30 seconds.
Bird Box in real life.
I don't think anybody could survive that for more than 10 seconds.
Thank you.
That's about how long I made it into the movie.
Thank you. So many people. Bird Box is, we could do. I'm like, everyone would die. You can't look outside. There'd be like 15 people left. It would just be so at the end, spoiler alert, the blind people survived, right? So like at the end, Sandra Bullock finds, if you haven't seen Bird Box at this point, I don't know what to tell you. Sandra Bullock finds a colony of blind people who aren't, they can go outside because they don't see anything. If you can't look outside, you're going to die. Give me a freaking break. Oh, there's going to be roving bands of it. No, the hell there isn't. You never glance outside. I just looked outside. I'm dead. Give me a break. The common cold, but every time you sneeze, flames come out of your nose.
I'd give it 2 years because eventually people are going to start running from anybody sniffling.
That's fair. See, so my last guest said that we actually might do okay, but it would be like social distancing would become a permanent thing. Because if someone sneezes, you're dead. And they're probably dead too, because flames coming out of your nose, this isn't dragon, mythology, like it's going to come out of your nose and burn you, and like you're going to die too.
Yep.
Okay, so, and then finally, the badger.
Listen, badgers are great animals, and they deserve a place replacing humanity in general. So once they get to the level of Planet of the Apes, they'll overthrow us. They'll make us their laborers, and I give it about 2.5 to 3 years before they rule the world.
So they might not even take us out. They'll just dominate everything.
Yeah.
So Planet of the Badgers.
Yes.
I'm actually okay with that. I feel like my life would be a lot easier if I could just wake up and the Badgers are telling me what to do, and I just go and do it, and I get to go back to bed. That just seems like actually not bad.
Pretty simple.
Like it seems like it's simple. It's like you wake up, the Badgers are like, "Oh, do this," and you go and do it, and then you get to take a nap. Hopefully they're. I just hope they're nice. I hope the Badgers are like a ruler who's like a benevolent ruler. They probably won't be. They seem like the mustelids seem like in general like they're just going to be really rough on us. Like look at their claws.
Look at the claws.
Like look at their claws. Like, but then also look at that face. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. They got such a cute face, but then they can murder you. Like So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much for participating in that. I want to give you a chance, and thank you so much for coming on. This was a real blast. We are definitely going to be working with you on Open the Ballots, both with Muddy Waters and with the Vermin Spike campaign. We're going to continue helping promote that. But before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to give your final thoughts. Anything you feel like you didn't get a chance to say, anything you want to promote. We do have your Open the Ballots Facebook group and the Voice of Liberty Facebook page on the show notes. So that is there. But anything you want to promote, including any of those things, I give you the floor. You have the final word. Henry Conoly, the floor is yours.
So I think the one thing that I also wanted to get to in this, and that I want to make sure people understand, is that this is not just something that we're working on for 2020. We're looking forward to 2021, and we're looking towards the future of what being on the ballot, getting on the ballot in a truly democratic election will look like. That's the big fight.
Okay.
We want to ensure that elections going forward ensure that democracy exists across all parties, that everybody has a voice. But the biggest thing that we're also talking about that we haven't said anything about yet, but I'm going to let it leak, is that we, on top of the electronic signatures thing, we want to use that as a reason and as a baseline to say, hey, guess what? Blockchain-backed elections are also possible. Because if we can have blockchain-backed elections and people don't have to drag their butts out to a polling place all the time, one, holy cow, suddenly we're living in the 21st century.
Right.
And two, maybe that 50% of people might actually load a web page and vote, because now they don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to be judged for what they're doing. They don't have to be hounded by polling workers, and they can go out and they can vote for whoever they want, write in whoever they want. If you don't agree with anybody, vote in Harambe. Let's go.
Nice. I like this. Blockchain-based voting. It's actually a similar proposal to what I've tried to push for even before this outbreak. We've been trying to push for switching from our cloistered system of state delegates going to a national convention and all the money that's spent on that, and which incentivizes our candidates to just talk to people that are already libertarian instead of going out in the world to spread the message like the Republicans and the Democrats incentivize their candidates to do, by switching to a public primary that would not be a taxpayer finance primary. It would be a voluntary Libertarian Party managed blockchain encrypted members only public primary. So all you had to do is pay the minimal fee to become a member, and you could vote for all of the things, everything from president, vice president, your local candidates, chair, state chair for national, state, whatever you wanted to vote for. You could vote for those things using like an app that would be blockchain based, that would be very secure, and would save a fortune for the state affiliates, for the national affiliate, and for all the members, and would also promote it. So we're kind of pushing for the same thing for actual, like, the general election. So I think it's a great idea. And
you brought up something that I had completely forgot. If I could just take a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing that I'm personally pushing for, some of the people within the Open the Ballots group are pushing for, is also a discussion, because COVID-19 has raised so many things that are situations we haven't been in, where we're looking at national convention and questioning how's that going to happen, if it's going to happen.
Right.
We're hoping that maybe we can also fire up a discussion on, do we have to have these expensive physical conventions that some people cannot afford to make it out to? So within this, we're also trying to generate a discussion.
Yep.
Do we have to have these physical conventions? Or can we find another electronic and virtual way that we can do this? We're proving it with state conventions right now. There's state conventions that are being held completely on Zoom.
Yep.
Let's have the talk, and let's put the pressure there also.
And not only did they have it on Zoom, some of them did it with like 2 days notice. Like, just to prove that this can be done, they had almost no time to do it. Or in some cases, they had a couple weeks or a month or whatever to plan it. And they're doing it. It's not impossible to do. It will be very hard having 2,500 people on an online group. There's a way to do it. There is a way to do it. We can do this, and it will cost way less than the way we've been doing it. And it will show that we are innovating more than the so-called big major parties. Well, if they're such big major parties, why are they still doing things the way they did it, 100 years ago? Why are we the ones innovating and showing the way forward? And we could work with other parties to demonstrate, a dynamic way of voting, so that we can then push for it at the actual official election level. So anyway, this is a whole. I mean, we could do
a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other episode we could do on that. So I hope that I hope we can be on each other's shows very, very soon. Henry, thank you so much. Stick around. I'm going to talk with you during the outro if that's okay. But thank you again for coming on, Henry. Can't wait to have you on again. And folks, thanks again for coming, for watching, my fellow Americans. Tomorrow night, I'm having a special members-only Libertarian Party Radical Caucus Ask Me Anything event. So if you're a member of the Libertarian Party Radical Caucus, I will be doing a members-only Ask Me Anything event about my campaign and why I think Vermin Supreme and I are the best pick for president and vice president. And really, any question you have, anything you want to ask me, I will be on there starting tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. In the there are two different Libertarian Party Radical Caucus groups on Facebook: Libertarian Party LP Radical Caucus and LP Radical Caucus members only. We will be live streaming in both of them, and so if you're a member, be sure to check that out. 8 p.m. on tomorrow night, and I will be there to answer whatever questions you may have, and then have a great weekend. I have some appearances that I was on different podcasts that I'll be posting on both Muddy Waters and my page, Spike Cohen, Your Next VP, and also on the Twitter at Real Spike Cohen. So be sure to check those out. There were two comedy podcasts and also a blockchain cryptocurrency related podcast that I was on. So be sure to check that out, and then have a great weekend. And then check out. Oh, Friday is my anniversary. That's not really anything for you. I just want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. Hi, honey. And then next week, be sure to come right back here to Muddy Waters Media Tuesday night for the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where I and my heterosexual life partner, Matt Wright, will be parsing through the week's events like the sweet little spring cherub quarantine children that we are. And then come back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. for my fellow Americans, this show that you just watched, but again next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. I don't know who my guest is yet. You're not going to believe who my guest is. I'm not going to believe who it is. I don't know who it is. I may not have a guest. I may just do my own thing. I don't know. Anyway, have a great week, and thanks again for tuning in, and God bless you.
They say about an eye for an eye in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny? I would cry when a loved one dies. I recognize that body outside, but the holes in the body that was alive. Now confined to a chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line. There's a pointless murder happening all the time. Either lose your life or mine, caught up in their versus die.